Welcome back to this course on blockchain and its application. So, in the last class we have discussed about the open consensus technology that is used in Bitcoin based on the puzzle solving strategy. So, the broad idea is that whenever you are in an open network, you have multiple people, you do not know that who are the participants. What you do that you simply pose up certain challenges to the participants. So, you say that hey, this is the challenges, let the participant try to solve that challenge, and the participant who first is able to solve that challenge, that participant we consider him or her as the leader, and whatever that participant says you consider that for further processing. Well, so that is the kind of broad idea which was there. So, the question comes that whenever you are posing this challenge, then why these participants will be able to solve the challenge? Well, so in a real environment you can say, or I can say that hey, if you are able to solve the challenge, well, the person who is actually able to solve the challenge, for that person the price of pizza or burger whatever that person want, I am going to provide it. Well, so that person will get the pizza or the burger for free. But what will happen in a kind of cryptocurrency network, or what will happen in a blockchain network? Well, so what is the kind of reward that they are going to get, or what is the kind of incentive that the participants are going to get, so that they can participate in the challenge and they can try to find out a solution for that challenge. Well, so this particular thing we are going to discuss today. So, broadly our lecture topic today is on something called Bitcoin mining. So, this entire consensus procedure that is used in Bitcoin, we call it as the mining. So, we are going to look into this Bitcoin mining, the idea of Bitcoin mining, the economic model behind Bitcoin. So, this economic model actually says that why someone would be interested to solve the puzzle, and then finally we are going to have a discussion about this popularity of cryptocurrencies and how the cryptocurrency has become popular over the time. So, these are the keywords, mining and miners. So, we are going to discuss this idea of mining, the idea of mining reward, the price of Bitcoin, and what are the different cryptocurrencies which are beyond Bitcoins, and what are the kind of applications which are possible beyond Bitcoin. Now, in the context of Bitcoin, the consensus mechanism, the open consensus mechanism that we are discussing in the last lecture, this particular open consensus mechanism, it is termed as Bitcoin mining. Well, so why do we call it mining? Well, so we are going to look into that within our next few minutes, but before that let me try to explain you, or broadly explain you, this idea of mining. Later on in the context of Bitcoin, we are going to look into the details of it. So, this mining involves a set of special nodes in the Bitcoin network. Well, so these nodes are termed as miner. Now, what is the task of the miner? So, the task of the miners is to propose new block for the blockchain. Well, now every block, it contains a set of transactions. Well, so what the miner does? The miners basically hears these transactions which are getting floated in the network. Well, and say for example, I am going to make a transactions of 1000 rupees to my wife. So, that transactions I just float it in the Bitcoin network. So, the miners, they collect those transactions, and that way they collect the transactions from different participants, combine those transactions together and form a block. Well, now this particular block need to be added in the blockchain. Now, the question comes that there are multiple different miners, right? Now, who is going to add the block? Well, here at this point in the Bitcoin blockchain network, we use the idea of puzzle solving. So, the same concept that we have discussed earlier, that well, I will have an open challenge, and the participant who is going to solve that challenge, that participant is going to be the leader and can tell me whether we should collectively go for a burger or for a pizza. Now, here in the Bitcoin blockchain network, I have multiple different miners. Again, this is an open network, right? So, anyone can participate as a miner. I do not want to put any restriction on that. Well, and the person who is going to join as a miner, it is not necessary that the person has to register himself or herself as a miner. Well, so if I wish, I will just run the miner application on my laptop, on my desktop, on my server, on my mobile, wherever I want to run it. Well, now the question comes that different miners, they can create different blocks. Well, but by the principle of blockchain, I should have a single block that should be added up in the chain. Well, so the question comes that among different miners who are building up this new block, which block I am going to accept and I am going to put into my chain. Well, so here comes this idea of puzzle solving. Well, so the puzzle solving problem says me that hey, I have an open puzzle that have been posted in the network. Now, the participants are going to solve that puzzle. So, the participant who is going to solve the puzzle first, that participant becomes the leader. Borrow the idea, put it here in the context of blockchain. So, I have multiple different miners. Now, among those multiple different miners, everyone is having their own block, and now out of those multiple blocks, I need to pick up one block and add it to the blockchain. Which block I am going to pick up? I am throwing a challenge to the miners. The miners are going to solve that puzzle individually and independently. So, the miner who is been able to solve the puzzle first, I will take up the block from that person and add it to the blockchain. Here comes the interesting fact. So, if I am been able to solve the puzzle, I have the proof. Well, so the solution works like a proof. So, I can add that proof to the block saying that hey, this is the proof that I have been able to solve the puzzle. Now, others in the network, so the other miners, other normal participants, everyone, they can see that proof in the block. Well, they can see that well the proof is here. So, the proof is here means the miner is been able to solve the challenge, solve the hash problem, well, that we discussed earlier, and so this block is a valid block and this block can be added to the blockchain. Now, the competition gets started for the next block. Well, same thing gets repeated, and as I have mentioned earlier that one of the interesting property of this hash based puzzle solving is that there is no deterministic algorithm. Everyone need to try randomly. Now, when everyone is trying randomly, during that time, it is very likely that in round 1, one person wins, in round 2, a second person wins, in round 3, a third person wins, and so on. So, different people wins at different round. So, that way a single miner is not gaining the control over the entire blockchain. Well, I am not sure, I will never be able to sure that I have created a block, whether that block is going to get added or not. Well, so this is the niceness in this entire algorithm, this entire open consensus algorithm. Well, so in the context of the miners, they are solving this puzzle. Well, and the puzzle that we have posed in the context of Bitcoin blockchain, it is a heart puzzle. Well, so what is that heart puzzle? The heart puzzle is that you need to find out the hash, a target hash, that output value, the output hash value has been given, and you need to find out a nonce that will produce as the hash. Well, so that means if my hash function is y equal to hash of x plus n, so this y and x are given and I need to find out n. So, this is the challenging problem, and because this is a challenging problem, the miners need to keep on retrying. Well, and when they are keeping on retrying, they need to put up their computational power. Well, now just in that context, because you have to do certain work. So, this whenever you are just trying to find out the solution, we call it that, well, you are doing certain work. Well, and once you have been able to solve this particular challenge, you have been able to find out this nonce n, that basically means that you are being able to find out a solution of it. So, you can just show it as a proof that, well, you are being able to solve the puzzle. Well, and that way you are showing the proof of the work that you have done to become a successful miner, to add a block in the blockchain. That is why we term it as proof of work. But the fundamental problem that I had, that why someone would be interested to be a miner, because this particular problem that I have, it is a hard problem. Well, and it is like that, to solve this problem you have to also invest a significant amount of your computation power. So, why someone would be interested to devote that much of computation power to solve this particular challenge? Okay. So, in this context, I need to have some kind of incentivization mechanism. Well, so what is going to be the incentive mechanism that I have? Well, that the Bitcoin blockchain should incorporate in this mining procedure. Well, so we are now going to next find out the answer of this question, that why someone would want to be the leader and to participate as a miner in the Bitcoin blockchain. So, here comes the incentive. Well, so by solving this puzzle, you would be able to earn money or Bitcoin. Well, so this is really fascinating, right? So, if you are participating as a miner, you will be able to earn Bitcoin out of it. So, how does it work? So, the idea is something like this: whenever you are successfully adding a block in the blockchain. So, remember, I am using the term successful addition of a block. So, whenever you are successfully adding a block in the blockchain, then in return you are going to get certain Bitcoin. Okay? This is interesting, and this is the kind of incentive for the miner which will actually attract the miners or attract people to participate as a miner and try to generate new block for the blockchain. Well, you see, this is very interesting and very fascinating. Why? Because again, you have a kind of complete decentralized or distributed architecture. Well, you do not have any kind of central authority who is going to control this formation of the blockchain or going to control the transactions, the financial transactions that you are doing in the network. And at the same time, you are just, whenever you are participating in the Bitcoin network, you are just need to ensure that, well, to make this Bitcoin network to work perfectly, I need these miners and all these different roles. So, the network itself is finding out a solution, or the technology itself is finding out a solution that, well, let us have this rewarding mechanism which will attract people to participate as a miner. So, it is something like that, I have generated a transactions, there are people who are going to validate the transactions, and because people are going to validate my transactions collectively, that will ensure that whatever transactions I am making in the network, they are the kind of correct and valid transactions. Well, so it is a completely people driven financial network. Well, So, the persons are getting monetary benefit. So, when the persons are getting monetary benefit, they would be interested to manage the system, and as a consequence the way they are managing the system, they are participating in the mining procedure. So, it ensures the correct operations of the network or the correct operations of the blockchain. Well, now by participating in the mining procedure, you are getting certain Bitcoin. So, the question comes that from where these Bitcoins are coming from? Well, so this is actually a kind of nice economic model. So, what is happening here, that this reward which you are getting, this encourages the community to participate in the mining through this incentivization mechanism, and at the same time it produces new Bitcoins in the system. Okay. So, this is interesting. So, producing new Bitcoin in the system, this is something similar to minting new coins. Well, so the coin means that you have, depending on the GDP and the financial outcome of a country, the government always decide that, well, we will push some new money in the market, well, to make a kind of financial balance in the market. So, that way every year or every financial quarter, certain amount of new money that got introduced in the market, so that people can get more money. So, this new money which is there in the standard economics model, that over the time you will have this more money in the market which have been generated, which is being controlled by the Reserve Bank. But in this case, in the case of Bitcoin money generation procedure, Bitcoin is producing this new money and giving it as a reward to the miners in the exchange of the computing power that they are investing to mine a new block. Well, and this is exactly the idea from where the term mining comes from, because it is producing new Bitcoin in the system. So, that is the reason we say that, well, because this procedure is generating new Bitcoin, so it is basically mining the Bitcoin. Well, so that is why whenever some new block is added into the Bitcoin blockchain, it produces these new coins. That means it produces more Bitcoin, and that way the coins are getting mined. Well, so that way, by summarizing these principles from the rewarding mechanism and at the same time this coin generation mechanism, what we can say that, well, the Bitcoin network, it works like a reserve bank. Well, so it is regulating the flow of money or the flow of Bitcoin in the market, but without any explicit governance. This is the kind of most interesting part, that, well, I do not have any control of any bank, I do not have any control of any government organization, but still I am being able to develop a successful financial system through which people can make transactions with each other, they can participate in a business in an open marketplace, and at the same time it incorporates the standard practices of a financial marketplace. That means control the flow of the currency in the market and generate new currency over time, so that you can reach to certain kind of saturation point in the market. Well, so that way, if you remember on the first lecture on this entire journey of or the history of blockchain that we started 3-4 lectures back, I mentioned that, well, this entire idea of blockchain, it is based on 3 pillars. One was the distributed system, the second one was the crypto mechanisms, the cryptographic techniques, and the third one is a nice economic model. Well, and here comes this economic model. So, which actually regulates this flow of Bitcoin in the network. So, by combining all these different features which are being supported in Bitcoin, which are being supported over Bitcoin, it has actually made this cryptocurrency very popular among people, because people see that first of all I can use Bitcoin to do financial transactions which cannot be tracked. Well, obviously you can ask me the question that might have legal implication. So, the terrorist can buy arms with Bitcoin that cannot be tracked upon. Yes, you are right, the terrorist can do that, and because of that reason we have all the legal debate about the use of Bitcoin. Well, so the different countries, different governments says that, well, this is a currency that we cannot regulate, that we cannot control. If certain mishap happens, there is no way to track it. So, that is the reason we are not going to allow this particular currency in our country. So, that happened with many countries, you know. Well, so the people who regularly follow up with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. So, these are the legal debate is there, but if we just take aside this legal debate, we will see that, well, at the back end Bitcoin has combined multiple different technologies together, and as we have seen that none of these technologies are very new, or none of these technologies are kind of very innovative. It is something that people have already proposed, people have already talked upon. What the person Satoshi did, that he or she, actually we really do not know that who is Satoshi Nakamoto. It is again a kind of hidden identity. The person never came into public, just like Bitcoin. Well, so the currency does not have any control. You do not have any control about over that person also. You do not know who that person is. So, well, what that person has done, or what that person has cleverly integrated. So, he or she has integrated concept from different domains, concept from distributed systems. So, borrowed the concept of distributed consensus, then used the cryptographic techniques to secure, to have a kind of hash based chain, used this cryptographic puzzle solving mechanism to generate a proof, and then have taken the economic model which can at the same time regulate the flow of Bitcoin in the market, and at the same time incentivize the miners to participate in this process. Well, so that way, if you just try to combine all this together, you will see that, well, it was finally be able to generate a technology that people can freely use. By participating in the validation procedure, by participating in the management procedure of that technology, you can earn money, and that actually made many people interested towards this mining procedure. Well, so once upon a time, I think many people, including me, we have just participated in that mining. We have tried to mine some new Bitcoin, and that way different kind of mining techniques that got even evolved over time. Well, so there was mining pools, there was this Bitcoin exchange, and so on. Well, so this was the kind of crux behind the development of Bitcoin, and that intelligently combined these cryptographic techniques and the open consensus techniques together, and build up a data structure based on that hash chain, the idea of hash chain, which is tamper proof, which people can publicly verify, and which is immutable. Well, so that made the idea very popular. Well, and Bitcoin is, again, what I would say, that Bitcoin is not the only reason behind the popularity of this technology. As we see in the next few minutes, and as well as in the subsequent lecture, that this entire idea of having something called a public ledger, where you can put the financial transactions that everyone can verify. So, this entire idea had bootstrapped the generation of different other innovative ideas, which actually made this technology applicable to multiple other applications, or rather multiple other innovative applications, where you can put them up. and that made this technology really very popular. Well, so if I just try to have a journey over that, so this blockchain 1.0, which we call as the distributed ledger technology. So I guess that the term ledger, you are familiar with the term ledger. Ledger basically means where you can log the financial transactions or any kind of transactions. Now it is a kind of distributed public ledger. Why we call it as a public ledger? Because anyone can see that ledger and verify that correctness of the content in that ledger, and it is a kind of distributed architecture. So this distributed ledger technology or DLT, it has opened up this Bitcoin, which is really the money for the internet, and that way it has given generation of not only Bitcoin, but many other cryptocurrencies. So around 3rd January 2009, Nakamoto mined the first block of the Bitcoin network. That first block of the Bitcoin network, we call it as the Genesis block. Around 2013, Coinbase, who continuously keep track of different Bitcoin transactions, they reported selling around $1 million worth of Bitcoin. So many other cryptocurrencies have been evolved after that, including Ethereum, Litecoin, and so on. So we will look into Ethereum later in details. Now, if you just look into the prices of Bitcoin, well, so the value of the Bitcoin increased drastically over time. So around May 2010, it was 1 Bitcoin was equivalent to $0.01. Around April 2014, so 1 Bitcoin was in the range of $340 to $530. Around December 2017, it was around $13,800. And today I am going to recording this lecture, and today I just checked the price of the Bitcoin at the morning around 10:30 a.m. Around that time, the price was price for 1 Bitcoin was $44,000 to $85.5. So you can see that the price of the Bitcoin has been increased drastically, and that way the people who mined Bitcoin in its early times, they had become the millionaire right now. Well, so there are multiple people who initially just get hold of some Bitcoin. Well, so if it is 100 Bitcoins at that time, around 2011, 2012, around 2015, during that time, now it is millions of US dollar, equivalent to millions of US dollar. Well, now if you just try to look into the popularity of cryptocurrency, you will see that around from January 2013, 2014, during that time this Bitcoin became popular, started becoming popular, and the peak reached around 2000 in the mid of 2017. After that, there was a lot of debate about Bitcoin. So that's why you see that after 2018 there is a drop, so there is a drop after 2018, because during that time this legal debate around Bitcoin was there in the market. People started debating whether Bitcoin should be legal or not. After that, this entire debate got faded up a bit, and people again started using Bitcoin, and the popularity got increased again. But the interesting fact around that time is this: if you look into another cryptocurrency called Ethereum, so you will see that there is a drastic increase in the Ethereum use around 2018. Well, so this increase in the Ethereum use, that was because of another interesting feature in Ethereum, which is called decentralized applications or dApps. Well, so what are these dApps? Well, so these DLTs that can contain information beyond financial transactions. Well, so what we have seen till now in case of Bitcoin, that within DLT you can log the financial transactions. But what if rather than logging financial transactions, I submit an executable code as a transactions? Well, this was another path-breaking idea that was innovated around that time, and Ethereum had successfully used that. Well, let us use a piece of executable code, and let us assume that this piece of executable code is my transaction. Well, So, this is not a new idea, again means the idea which evolved around Bitcoin or blockchain, none of them are very new idea, people have already used it, but it is something like that different technology they have been combined in an intelligent way. So, people already know in the security domain attacks like remote code execution or code injection, where you actually inject some additional code. Say for example, you have a login button, in that login button rather than putting your username you put up an executable code, and whenever at the backend server, whenever it checks that, it actually execute that code and something happens at the backend server. Possibly it opens up a backdoor through which an attack becomes possible. Now, these transactions are getting executed over DLT, that basically equivalent to your code is getting executed whenever you are putting up an executable code as a transactions. Well, and it is a decentralized architecture, it is a distributed architecture, you are running a consensus algorithm. So, that means you have a consensus on that code execution. This is interesting. Well, and this actually gives birth of another idea called smart contract, that we are going to see in details in the next lecture. So, that is all for today. Hopefully, I will be able to see all of you in the next lecture. Thanks for attending. Take care.